Across the windswept plains of ancient Mesopotamia, whispers of sky-born beings echo through crumbling ruins. In the cradle of civilization, where the first cities rose from mud and reed, people spoke of powerful entities descending from the heavens. Who were these mysterious beings the Sumerians called the Anunnaki? Were they merely myth or something more? For generations, tales of gods and visitors from the sky have captivated humankind. Ancient texts, endless questions. Could the first chapters of human civilization have been co-authored by intelligences beyond our world? Tonight we delve into the origin of the legend, the echoes of the Anunnaki, and embark on a journey to uncover the truth behind the myth. The answers lie buried in clay and stone, awaiting those who dare to seek them. 5,000 years ago, in the fertile land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, history as we know it began. Ancient Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, is often called the cradle of civilization. Here the Sumerians built humanity's first cities, like Eridu, Uruk, and Ur, and invented the earliest known writing system, cuneiform, inscribing their legacies on clay tablets. It was a world of firsts, first laws, first agriculture on a grand scale, first organized religion, a stunning leap forward in culture and technology around the 4th millennium BCE. To the people of Sumer, this sudden flourishing was no accident or mere human ingenuity. They believed divine hands guided them. The Sumerians attributed their knowledge and prosperity to the gods, especially the enigmatic group of deities known as the Anunnaki. In their own records, the Sumerians tell us that the very institution of kingship and civilization was a gift from these beings. The Sumerian king list, an ancient chronicle of rulers, begins with a provocative statement. After the kingship descended from heaven, the kingship was in Eridu. Worldhistory.org. In their tradition, Eridu was more than just the first city on earth. It was a city created by the gods as the starting point of civilization. Worldhistory.org. Imagine the scene, a sprawling temple city emerging on the banks of the Euphrates, its people claiming that heavenly beings came down to establish order and rule. To the Sumerians, the Anunnaki were not distant, abstract deities. They were living patrons of cities, the bringers of arts and sciences, the very founders of human society. Their presence was felt in every aspect of life, from the granaries to the throne room. We stand today on the same ground, amid the ruins of Ur and Uruk, and wonder how such an advanced culture appeared seemingly overnight. Was it sheer human genius blooming in a hospitable land? Or did the Sumerians really receive help from something beyond themselves? The question leads us deeper into their stories and records. In baked clay tablets and towering temple ziggurats, the ancient Mesopotamians left clues about the Anunnaki, their sky gods, who they thanked for the gifts of civilization. To uncover the identity of these beings, we must decode the symbolism of temples and the accounts etched in cuneiform, the very echoes of the first great civilization on Earth. The name Anunnaki reverberates through the earliest myths and records of Mesopotamia. But who are they in those ancient narratives? On tablets pulled from the sands, in royal libraries and temple archives, the story of the Anunnaki unfolds in glimpses. The term Anunnaki in Sumerian means offspring of Anu, or princely offspring, marking them as the children and servants of Anu, the sky father, and Kai, the earth mother. In Sumerian creation, myths, and epics, the Anunnaki appear as a pantheon of gods who decree the fates of humanity and shape the world's destiny. They are mentioned in contexts both grand and grim, from the granting of kingship to the unleashing of floods. One of the most illuminating sources is the Epic of Atra-Hasis, a creation myth dating back to the 18th century BCE. Recorded on fragmented Akkadian clay tablets, it tells how the world was ordered and humanity was made. According to this epic, there was a time when lesser gods, tired of their labors, rebelled against their toils. In response, the greater gods, led by Anu, sky, Enlil, air command, and Enki, water wisdom, conceived a solution: humankind. They created humans to carry the burden of work, to till the land and keep the world running so that the gods could rest. In this context, Anunnaki refers to those senior gods who presided over the plan, while the toiling junior gods are sometimes called the Igigi. The Atra-Hasis myth thus paints a vivid picture of purpose: humanity as servants of the gods, fashioned from clay mixed with divine blood, a recurring motif in Mesopotamian lore. It's a striking idea. Our ancestors viewed themselves as literally made to serve these sky beings, offering them devotion and labor in exchange for life and protection. The clay tablets also speak of a great flood sent by the gods, a cataclysm to quiet a world grown overpopulated and noisy. In these flood myths, paralleling the later biblical tale of Noah, it is Enlil, chief of the Anunnaki on earth, who decides to wipe the slate clean, and Enki, who defies the decree by saving Atra-Hasis, or Utnapishtim, and the seed of life. Such stories underscore that the Anunnaki were not uniform in will or temperament. They had conflicts and complex personalities. Imagine a council of powerful beings debating humanity's fate, some wrathful, some compassionate. These are no mere fairy tales scratched on clay. To the Sumerians and Akkadians, they were divine history, lessons about the volatile patrons who could bless or curse mankind. In other records, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, we find the Anunnaki referenced as well. Gilgamesh, the hero king of Uruk, is described as two-thirds divine, a supposed offspring of the gods, and he seeks out secrets of immortality in the land of Noah's ancestor. The Anunnaki make an appearance as judges in the underworld in the myth of Inanna's descent, where the 7 Anunnaki sit in judgment. We see them as a collective of divine powers who could convene in council, grant kingship, mete out judgment, and even decide life and death. These consistent depictions across texts and city-states suggest the Anunnaki were central to Mesopotamian cosmology. They were the divine bureaucracy of the universe. Archaeology has given life to these myths. Over 100,000 cuneiform tablets have been unearthed from sites like Nineveh, or Nippur, and Mari, detailing everything from grain sales to epic battles of gods. On many of these tablets and cylinder seals, we catch visual glimpses of the Anunnaki. Visual: a cylinder seal impression rolling out on clay, revealing figures of winged deities and priests. Winged figures wearing the horned crown of divinity appear, sometimes alongside strange symbols, a starry sky or the tree of life, and mortals paying homage. One famous artifact, the Atta seal, circa 2300 BCE, shows a scene of 4 gods: the goddess Inanna, with wings outspread, the sun god Utu Shamash rising with rays, Enki with rivers flowing from his shoulders, and Enki's two-faced vizier, Isimud world, history, org world history. Org. These images, carved in stone, are like snapshots of ancient belief, the Anunnaki in their splendor, interacting with the world. As we study them, the line between myth and history blurs. Are these carvings mere artistic imagination, or did they reflect encounters the Sumerians genuinely believed their ancestors had with divine beings? Each tablet, each seal is a record as much as a myth, an echo of what those people experienced or dreamed in the deep past. The Anunnaki were not a monolithic group. They had a hierarchy and roles, a family tree of divinities with power and purpose woven into their very identities. At the apex of their pantheon sat Anu, the heavenly father, lord of the skies. Anu was said to reside in the highest heavens and was more a distant figurehead, yet all the Anunnaki were offspring of Anu, carrying out his will. Directly beneath Anu were his children, the principal gods who often took charge of affairs on earth. Among them, Enlil loomed large, the god of air and wind, king of the gods on earth, and patron of the city of Nippur. Enlil's word held cosmic authority. When the assembly of gods met, it was Enlil who decreed the fates of nations. Another was Enki, called Ea in Akkadian, Enlil's half-brother, lord of water, wisdom, and creation, who presided from the city of Eridu. Enki was a benefactor to humanity, a crafty god who often schemed to help humans survive divine wrath. It was Enki, for instance, who taught Atra-Hasis to build the ark, and thus saved mankind from the flood. Then there was Nin-Hursag, also known as Kai or Ninmah, the earth mother and goddess of fertility, Nana, Sin, the moon god, Utu, Shamash, the sun god and arbiter of justice, and Inanna, Ishtar, the fiery goddess of love and war, later celebrated as the Queen of Heaven. These seven, Anu, Enlil, Enki, Ninhursag, Nana, Utu, Inanna, are often referred to as the seven gods who decree fate, the great Anunnaki. They were the executive pantheon, the divine cabinet of Mesopotamia's spiritual world. Each major city had one of these gods as its patron, and each god had temples, priests, and devoted followers. But power among the Anunnaki was not shared equally. The ancient myths describe a time when even gods had to labor. Before humans, lesser divine beings called the Igigi performed menial tasks, digging rivers, tending the land, for the great gods. In Atra-Hasis, we read that these Igigi toiled for 3,600 years and finally rebelled, burning their tools and surrounding Enlil's house in protest. The Anunnaki had to convene an emergency council. Their solution to the Igigi strike was radical: create a new primitive worker to take over the toil. Thus humans were fashioned, shaped from clay mixed with the blood of a slain divine being, one of the Anunnaki who was sacrificed for the task according to the story. This tale reveals not only a hierarchy among the gods, Anunnaki as masters, Igigi as workers, but also a stark purpose behind humanity's creation. We were made to fill a labor gap, to be servants to the gods. This notion of purpose is humbling and haunting. To the ancient Mesopotamians, their very existence was tied to serving, appeasing, and sustaining these higher powers. Regular offerings, ritual worship, and obedience weren't just piety. They were literally the duty humans were designed for. The powers attributed to the Anunnaki were immense and elemental. They controlled nature and destiny. Enlil could unleash storms and droughts or crown kings and empires. Inanna could sow love or chaos in human hearts. Utu's sun would guarantee justice by day, while Nana's moon oversaw the rhythms of fertility and time at night. And yet, for all their might, the Anunnaki were depicted with very human-like emotions and rivalries. They quarreled amongst themselves. Enlil and Enki, for example, had different philosophies. Enlil often stern and punitive, Enki empathetic and cunning. In one legend, when humanity's noise and hubris grew too great, it was Enlil who sought to silence them with a plague and then a flood, while Enki secretly defied the consensus to preserve a remnant of humans. These stories suggest a purpose beyond servitude. Perhaps the Anunnaki also saw themselves as teachers or disciplinarians of humankind. They bestowed gifts, like Enki granting the arts of civilization in the tale Enki and the World Order, where the Anunnaki take up their dwellings among the people and spread crafts and laws, but they also enforce cosmic law, ensuring humans remembered their place. The relationship was symbiotic. The gods needed the worship and labor of humans. Humans needed the guidance and protection of the gods. Together, they maintained the balance of the world. Perhaps the most striking symbols of the Anunnaki's hierarchy and presence are the great ziggurats that still dominate the archaeological sites of Mesopotamia. These tiered temple towers were physical links between earth and heaven, places where human priests could ascend toward the realm of the gods, and where the gods might descend to meet them. The ziggurat of Ur, for instance, was dedicated to Nana, the moon god, and at its summit stood a shrine where it was believed Nana dwelt and received offerings. Each city's patron Anunnaki had such a sanctuary. It is here in these sacred precincts that power was ritually transferred. The kings were anointed by the grace of the gods, the harvests blessed or cursed according to divine favor. The Anunnaki's purpose in these rituals was clear: to legitimize human authority and sustain the order of civilization. Kings often styled themselves as the servants or even children of the Anunnaki, ruling by divine mandate. In return, the kings built ever more splendid temples and offered tribute to keep the gods pleased. This grand hierarchy, gods above, kings and priests in between, laborers below, was the blueprint of Sumerian society. And at the top, unseen but always watching, were the Anunnaki, the great sky beings who had descended in the distant past and set all this in motion. But who truly were these Anunnaki? Divine archetypes born from human imagination? Symbolic personifications of natural forces? Or could they have been something else entirely? Beings of flesh and blood that ancient people encountered and remembered as gods? It is here that we transition from established history into the realm of speculation and provocative theory. To pursue the Anunnaki's identity further, we must cast our gaze upward, to the stars that glittered above Sumer's night skies, and outward to ideas at the fringes of archaeology and myth. For decades, a bold hypothesis has captured the imagination of researchers and the public alike. What if the Anunnaki were not gods at all, but extraterrestrial visitors? Could the ancient Sumerians have been recording actual events and encounters under the guise of mythology? This idea, popularized by several authors and researchers, often called ancient astronaut theorists, suggests that the tales of the Anunnaki may be historical accounts of an advanced civilization from another world interacting with early humans. It's a controversial proposition, but let us examine its roots. In 1976, researcher Zecharia Sitchin put forward a detailed version of this theory in his book, The 12th Planet. Sitchin claimed that the Anunnaki were in fact advanced humanoid extraterrestrials from a distant planet in our solar system, a hypothesized world called Nibiru, sometimes dubbed Planet X. According to Sitchin's translations, albeit widely challenged by scholars, Sumerian texts contain clues about this. References to a wandering planet with a long orbit and gods who came from the heavens to Earth. Sitchin argued that around 450,000 years ago, these beings arrived on Earth when their home planet's fate hung in the balance. In his narrative, the Anunnaki needed a precious resource, gold, to repair their planet's failing atmosphere. Earth, rich in gold, drew them here. They established base camps in Mesopotamia and Africa, mining and extracting ores. But the work was arduous, and even these advanced beings grew weary of the toil. Thus, echoing the Atra-Hasis myth, but with a cosmic twist, the Anunnaki leaders allegedly decided to engineer a solution. They created a new species to serve as miners and laborers, our very ancestors. If this sounds astonishing, it is. Sitchin's story holds that the Anunnaki genetically hybridized their own DNA with that of early hominids, perhaps Homo erectus, to produce Homo sapiens. In essence, we are, according to this theory, the children of the Anunnaki, a slave species born to dig gold, who later were taught just enough civilization to become useful. Sumerian myths of gods forming humans from clay could be interpreted in this light as veiled descriptions of genetic manipulation or laboratory creation. The theory posits that the breath of life the gods gave mankind was their own genetic essence. It's a heady mix of myth and science fiction, test tubes in the Eden, perhaps too heady for mainstream acceptance. And indeed, Sitchin's interpretations have been heavily criticized by academics. But let's entertain the scenario for a moment, as a thought experiment guided by the ancient texts and the speculative mind. Proponents of the ancient astronaut hypothesis point to puzzling snippets of evidence. They note that the Sumerians were exceptionally knowledgeable in astronomy for their time. Some cylinder seals, such as the famous VA/243 seal, often cited by enthusiasts, seem to show a diagram of the solar system, with the sun at the center and a number of planetary bodies around it. Could this be a primitive recording of the solar system structure, including planets Uranus and Neptune, discovered only in modern times, and possibly Nibiru? Mainstream experts argue these interpretations are mistaken. The symbols are ambiguous, but the very fact that such questions arise speaks to the sophistication of Sumerian astronomy. They tracked the movements of Venus, knew the length of the year with great accuracy, and divided the sky into constellations. Where did this knowledge come from? Ancient astronaut theorists answer, from the Anunnaki, the beings from the sky. There are also the legends of knowledge bringers found worldwide. In Mesopotamia, Enki was said to have gifted humanity with the arts of civilization, writing, farming, building, law. In Egypt, myths tell of Osiris and Thoth doing the same. In Mesoamerica, the god Quetzalcoatl, a feathered serpent from the sky, and in the Andes, Viracocha, similarly come from afar to teach engineering, agriculture, and culture. These could be coincidences, or, as ancient astronaut proponents suggest, echoes of the same event. Perhaps the Anunnaki's influence extending across the globe under different names. It's conjecture, but intriguing. Disparate cultures all attributing their leap into civilization to visitors or gods who arrived in deep antiquity. Could the Anunnaki have traveled beyond Mesopotamia? Or could other extraterrestrial groups have done for other regions what the Anunnaki supposedly did in Sumer? The questions multiply, and each ancient site becomes a potential piece of a cosmic puzzle. The theory also points to feats of engineering that seem ahead of their time. How did ancient people move multi-ton stones to build pyramids and megalithic temples with such precision? According to Sitchin and others, the Anunnaki built the pyramids and other monumental structures around the world, using technology beyond the capability of humans of that era. The Great Pyramid of Giza, though Egyptian and not Mesopotamian, often enters the conversation. It's aligned with cardinal directions with astonishing accuracy. Its dimensions encode complex mathematics, achievements hard to explain by trial and error. If one subscribes to the ancient astronaut view, these marvels are the calling cards of the Anunnaki or their cosmic brethren, signs of an advanced knowledge deposited on Earth. Even the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, like the one at Ur, could be seen as inspired by the need to connect with those who came from the skies. A stairway for the gods, yes, but perhaps also for sky-faring visitors to land? Such interpretations are speculative, but they fire the imagination. Naturally, the scientific and archaeological establishment approaches these claims with deep skepticism. No physical remains of alien visitors have been found in Sumer's ruins, only the imaginations of its people captured in clay. Linguists assert that Sitchin mistranslated Sumerian words to fit his narrative, and yet the allure of the question, were they gods or visitors, remains. We find ourselves rereading the old myths with new eyes. When the texts say the gods dwelt among us, or kingship descended from heaven, could they be almost literal? When the epic poetry describes bright objects or flying chariots of the gods, do we interpret those as metaphors or as possibly something technological? Consider the tale of Etana, a Sumerian king who was said to fly to heaven on the back of an eagle. To some, this sounds like a primitive description of a flight in a craft. Or the Babylonian epic of creation, Enuma Elish, where the gods engage in a celestial battle. Might this be a mythologized recounting of an otherworldly event? In weighing these ideas, it's important to use the phrasing of possibility and not certainty. Ancient astronaut theory doesn't disprove the existence of the Anunnaki as traditional gods, but it reframes them as flesh and blood beings with advanced technology whose extraordinary deeds earned them worshipful reverence. If, and it's a big if, this were true, it would imply that contact with extraterrestrials shaped the earliest human civilization. It's a stunning claim, and while mainstream science finds no concrete evidence for it, the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, as the saying goes. So we keep investigating, comparing myth with geology, legend with artifact. We ask daring questions. Could the flood story be linked to a real, perhaps engineered event? Did ancient genetic advances occur that we haven't recognized? Why do so many cultures speak of beings descending from the stars in the same period of prehistory? The Anunnaki lie at the heart of these musings. Whether gods, legends, or visitors from afar, their story challenges us to look at human origins in a broader, more wondrous context. The sun sets on the land of Sumer, casting long shadows over temples and palaces long turned to dust. In this quiet moment, the weight of ages is palpable. Echoes of the Anunnaki linger here, in the mute stones and the faded marks on ancient tablets, in the very idea that perhaps we were never alone at the dawn of civilization. The question of who were the Anunnaki has led us on a journey through myth and history, fact and conjecture. We have seen them through the eyes of ancient priests as majestic gods who shaped the fate of humanity. We have considered them through the lens of modern speculation as possible travelers from the stars. In both views, the Anunnaki stand as pivotal characters in the human story, either as divine archetypes or as agents of our uplift. Thousands of years later, we still feel their presence in our cultural memory. Think of it. The very first stories ever written by human hands were about these beings. They gave us our first heroes and villains, our first sense of cosmic order. They inspired awe and devotion, and perhaps they still do, albeit in new forms. Today, when we look up at the twinkling firmament, we carry the same curiosity as the Sumerians gazing at Venus or Jupiter, wondering about the occupants of those distant lights. The Anunnaki represent that eternal yearning to understand our origins and our place in the universe. Are we the result of random evolution under an indifferent sky, or part of a deliberate saga involving higher powers or alien intelligences? The truth may be elusive, but the pursuit of it enriches us. As we conclude this first episode of Echoes of the Anunnaki, the mystery remains unsolved, and perhaps that is fitting. Mysteries drive us forward. The crumbled ziggurats and cuneiform tablets cannot speak aloud, but their silent testimony invites us to keep digging, questioning, and imagining. The echoes in the dust of Mesopotamia have much more to tell. Each hypothesis, whether conventional or radical, is a thread in the grand tapestry of our quest to know ourselves. And though we must be careful to separate evidence from speculation, we need not lose the sense of wonder that these ancient tales evoke. Sometimes it is in the interplay of myth and science that new insights emerge. In our next episode, we will follow the trail of the Anunnaki beyond Mesopotamia. We will explore how echoes of these sky beings reverberate in other ancient cultures, from the Indus Valley to the New World, and examine new discoveries that might shed light on the truth behind the legends. Could clues in South American temples, African mines, or Indus seals be connected to the saga of the Anunnaki? Join us as our journey continues, crossing continents and millennia in search of answers. Until then, we leave you with the enduring vision the Sumerians gave us. A world where gods walked among men, where the line between earth and sky blurred, and where, perhaps, the earliest chapters of humanity were co-authored by beings we are only beginning to comprehend. The tale of the Anunnaki remains alive, in our textbooks, in our museums, in our wildest theories, an ancient chorus whose final verse has yet to be sung. These are the echoes in the dust, and they beckon us to listen a little closer, to listen